Well, thanks for joining today for my part of the presentation. We're going to talk about the budget and hopefully coming maybe close to a close second to the Christmas season is your budget season. And most of you are probably already in it. Hopefully, some of you have already started it, maybe somewhat finished it, or at least thought about it or thought about someone else's budget. So between all that, hopefully you've been in the process of some level. So the budgets can be hard. You have multiple departments, multiple responsibilities. That time of season can be very stressful, and hopefully you have a group of people with you to kind of take you with during that process. But anyone who is part of that procedure or your processes in your entity, I definitely appreciate your guys' hard work out there. I've seen many different examples of different groups and how they do their budgets, and it's really hard. So I do want to just thank everyone for being part of those budgets, and hopefully you'll feel good about it at the end. It's a time where you're trying to do the best for your local government, and I hope that you feel kind of rewarding feelings towards it too, because you're helping your local government spend their money wisely, and citizens hopefully appreciate that too. And today I also do really hope to help in some way. So the different topics I will cover, please, take that as I'm just trying to help in any way I can, and we'll go from there. Okay, so the topics that will be covered today. So the top 5 reasons that you should do a budget. The state laws that may impact your entity. There's lots of different entities listening today, so I'll try to cover some of them, and there's some out there too that I'll put a list there that if you're not, you can definitely check that out. Many different century codes you can look at. Benefits of having a good budget, not just for state law, right? There's going to be other things that will hopefully help you throughout the year by having a good budget. Monthly budget maintenance. So you have this main thing that you're trying to do for the whole year, right? You want to watch it. You want to have other people watch it in your group, and hopefully all together you can make that budget work. And if you have to change something or pivot, that's what you want to be able to do. Another topic is what can go wrong. Like in any case, there's going to be something that could or may go wrong. So there's a few topics I will cover. Hopefully you can take that and just make sure it doesn't happen in your entity. Topics of interest. So there's a few different things that people have asked about that I want to make sure that I got covered in here, and hopefully that'll help other people too, because some of those questions I did get from many of you out there during the budget season or budget time, it does help other people too that we get to all talk about it. And then just the top tips for the budget on our website. I wanted to make sure just to still get some good questions about it. It's been a couple years since those have been on the website, but I know some people are still going to be trying it this year. So I know there's people still wanting to still know about it. So I did want to talk about that a little bit today too. And hopefully if there's something I can give you as a tip or just a helpful, hint to get you started with your own. So keep in mind that's on our website. There's ones out for a county, a city, and then other type entity. So if you want to try those or go check them out, if you want to have it up during even this presentation, you can definitely check that out too, and hopefully that'll help. Okay. Second here. Okay, so top 5 reasons you should do a budget. So it might be required under state law. So that depending on your type of entity, you are going to have, a century code that might make you go in to do a budget. And so that's a very good reason why you'd want to do it. Please check it out if you don't know or don't know your type of entity has that requirement. Check out today or just look up your century code. Okay, citizens will appreciate seeing where their tax dollars are going. Uh, I know from the trending in the last couple 3 years, there's many people out there that are interested in their own local government's budget. So you might get a whole lot more questions from people because people do care, and they might care even more now than they used to probably 5 or 10 years ago. So that'd be one very good reason to have a good one, so you can explain that to people as they have questions. Okay, your entity will be able to plan for upcoming projects, additions for staffing, and new equipment that is probably needed. So, with let's say the upcoming projects, that, let's say next year you're going to have a road project or a building project. You're able to kind of, check out what you need for that, and maybe project some costs that might be present, and you can plan for it then. Okay, additions for staffing. Let's say that you want to increase your department, or you built a new correctional center, for example, or added on to one. You are probably going to have a lot more staff to worry about, and you want to make sure that you are prepared for what the costs of those are going to be. So, if that's included, you're able to see it and have other people informed in that management group or your board, um, so that you know that it's coming. New equipment is needed with the rising cost of many different things, vehicles or motor graders or any type of equipment really. Those costs are up. So if you have a good plan for it, you can see what it's going to take to buy those pieces of equipment, and maybe your entity really needs a different vehicle next year or motor grader. That's going to help you kind of get prepared for that, or maybe even 2 years from now. That always helps too. Okay, departments will be able to know what can be spent and in what fiscal year. They might want to know, is it going to be in the budget this year or the next year budget? So when they're trying to give something to you, during that budgeting process, they know that it's going to be in this year or next year, or maybe in 3 years from now. There's lots of planning that's involved, and if they're all part of it, they can help give those numbers to you, and it probably just makes things a little bit easier for the whole everyone who's involved in the budget process. Board members they'll have more information on where the tax dollars are going to better serve the citizens. Most likely, they've gotten questions from people, or when final budgets get finished up, they might get questions from their citizens in their district or in their area. And the more information that they know and how they were part of it and what the money was being spent, then they can share that with people too. So then it helps them in their job, and it helps kind of the whole local government and anyone who is in it, including citizens. Okay, next section is the state laws that may impact your entity. I know Dan covered a few different topics here as well, but I want to make sure that there's lots of questions about these ones that I'm putting here specifically. So hopefully that'll help, and we'll see if we can get through some of these, and keep in mind too, anything that we have our interpretation of these century codes. So if you really do have some questions about how to proceed with some very specific things that you want to know, of course, ask your attorney, your state's attorney, those kind of people. So just keep that in mind. So 112302. This one has been a very important one, especially for you counties out there. There's obviously a lot of different century codes in Section 11. So if you haven't read a lot of those regarding Chapter 11 and you're a county, please do so. There's a lot of information about your entity in there, and this is just one of them. But there's many other ones out there too. So 112302. I know I just got back not too long ago from a conference with the counties and treasurers, auditors and treasurers, and I know someone mentioned that they're going to have a T-shirt made with this century code on it. So I hope some of you done that already. I think that was a fun thing to talk about during that conference, and frame on your wall too. That's okay too. But talking about this century code, so this is for counties, and um, one thing that you want to make sure is these are all the elements that have to be in your budget based off of this century code. Um, so the file that you are currently using, if you have your own version, or if you are using the one that we have on our website, these files they're meant to kind of keep you informed on where these elements are supposed to be, how they're supposed to be used, and they're included. So if you look at the first, 1, 2, 3 on the century code, those are all things that, for revenues and expenditures, you have to worry about the previous one, the current one, and the ensuing one, the one you're trying to do for the next year, right? So keep in mind, you have to put that data in there, and that your file hopefully will do that for you. So then you have the information there, so you can cover the elements. Other types of ones, the transfers is also an important one. You want to make sure that those transfers are in and out of the correct funds, and make sure that they equal. I'll talk about a little about that later in a topic, but that's one element that's important. The beginning and ending balances of each fund and estimates, for those 3 periods. Those are also very important because that's going to help you decide, what needs to be levied. And really, a lot of these elements are like this, but that's one very important one, because you have to know what your balance is, or your expected. Now, keep in mind, you see estimates, right? I want to make sure that's clear too. No one's saying that this is going to be perfect, right? But you have to make a good, reasonable attempt to make these estimates work. Some of the other elements too, I want to cover all, I don't want to say these word for word, but please read this century code and make sure that these elements are all in your budget. Okay, so 571531, paragraph 1. So this one is very important too, because most of the entities that are probably listening today, this is the main one that you have to worry about. If you notice, there's going to be counties, cities, townships, school districts, park districts, or other municipalities that levy taxes. So that covers, a decent range here. This is be very similar to what 112302 is doing, but this is kind of the main one that kind of everyone has to follow. So keep in mind, you're going to have the same type of elements, and your revenues, expenditures, your fund balances, your transfers, all that that information is still going to be in here too. So that's why the files that we have on our website all kind of align with these types of elements and century codes. So just don't forget about this one as well. Even if you're a county, you still have to worry about this one too, because you're in this one as well. Okay, so the interim fund. I know Dan talked a little about this too. This is very important because there's been a lot of questions about it that I personally have seen myself, and there is a lot of either questions or concerns on what people's fund balances are. And yes, it is a very important century code to worry about. If you notice in the very first 112302, it mentions cash reserve. It does mean the same thing as interim fund, though those terms are interchangeable. So to keep that in mind, if you hear cash reserve, also interim fund. And the 75% rule is in here. So if you read that, it kind of gives you the idea that yeah, your fund, your general fund, special revenue fund, does have to worry about the 75% rule. And sometimes it's been a little confusing for some of when when that comes into play. Are you talking about the year-end balances, or are you talking about appropriations? So yes, I mean, it is the appropriation, total appropriation that you are matching up with, not like a year-end cash balance. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at, and hopefully your file does this for you too. But if you look on our file, it kind of gives you kind of a check figure to make sure that you don't go over the 75% rule. And some entities might even have like a cash reserve interim fund or policy where you don't go over 50% or 25%, whatever you want to set it at. So this is something that some have really had great luck with, where they set a rate, and then it's consistent. Or if one year you figure that you need a little bit more than 25%, you up it to 30 or 35, and hopefully have a really great reason to do it. And I think if you use this century code in the right way, it is supposed to help you too. It's supposed to help you, kind of figure like, what's the max amount you should take on for next year, and this is supposed to give that for you. So this slide is just kind of give you a little example of what the formula would look like. If you have used, your budget file or our budget file, it's going to lay it out just like this. And this is based on a century code. So that's why the file, if you have something like that, is supposed to have it. So you have your appropriations in here, you have your revenues, you have your cash balances. You have, if you want to use the 5% taxes, or you non-collected taxes section, feel free to put that in here as well. So that's kind of what the formula looks like in the end. And if you think of it as, you have all these items coming in, from your all your support files, or from the stuff you gather from all departments, that's what you're trying to accomplish is number 10. So what's the amount you're going to levy? And that's kind of the process and formula that's used. So 40/40, so this would be the cities and parks out there that are listening. There is a lot of century codes that you have to worry about for your own budget. I probably couldn't have that many slides in here that relate to the budget. So I just wanted to, put these couple in here, that so just you're aware that, don't forget about going to look at these. And most likely your county auditor is already set up with, dates for you, when they want stuff in, and what times, because there's a preliminary and a final. And hopefully that you've already got some of that, you've already connected with, your county auditor. And if you look at the body of 40/40/09, it's going to be very the same items are in there too. So if you look at going back to 57 and then going back to this one, if you follow really any of those, it's supposed to kind of do the same thing. So your file still wants all the elements that are in here for 40/40, because you are a city and park. Also, you have to worry about it back in chapter 57. So just keep in mind that there's a lot out there for this one. And parks and cities, they have a lot of different things they have to do for like the preliminary and the final. And just if you're new in those positions, please read up on that. Ask another city or park next to you that had been there for a while. They'll know the ins and outs, of these as well. And for all the other entities listening in, there's a few century codes that probably relate something to your budget. Please go ahead and read, go find these and read them. There's anyone who is new in those types of those entities as well. It's nice to go read the century code that your law is based on. So budget is one piece of it, but there's lots of things that might relate to you that you want to know about as well if you haven't already. So this is just a few different century codes for people that, if you want to go look at that as well. Okay, the benefits of having a good budget. So management can plan for revenue coming in from local, state, federal, or other sources, which may decrease what is needed from the taxpayers. So when you're looking at your the revenue that you are trying to come up with, think about those ones you had in the past. Maybe you've gotten some state grants that you always get. or if you know what's coming. Maybe you've got a letter of some sort before the process here that you're working with now. Make sure you put those numbers in there, because that's gonna affect your bottom amount to levy, right? If you have more revenue that you know is coming in, you might not need to collect as much from taxpayers. So think about what the grants you have coming in. It could be a federal one. You know, if you got a letter or you applied for something and you obtained it, that's great. You know, and you're able to use that as your budgeted revenue. Other sources, you might know there's a donation coming in of a large amount. You know, that's going to help too. And those can come. Sometimes you may not know the exact number, but you know, if you look at the trend, maybe either the state or the federal or the other sources have been a consistent number or somewhat consistent. So you can go look at the last years and check that out. Each fiscal year has a plan to follow and should keep your entity from overspending. That's one of the things that you want to make sure throughout the year is, okay, some of these line items that you have a nice budget for, how did you and can you keep that on track, you know, throughout the year? You don't want to overspend if you don't need to. Of course, there's going to be things that happen, you know, that may not be foreseen at the time you're doing the budget. But if you have a nice plan, that's supposed to help you. Okay, this also helps your entity with short and long-term goals. Maybe you have a 3 to 5 year plan for some of your projects or some of the bigger equipment that you know you want to replace. Put those into some of those, you know, short and long-term goals. That's also going to help you get through the budget process, and you know, it helps departments plan, it helps the board members plan for things too, so they can think ahead. It might help you with decisions about taking on long-term debt. Maybe if you have your budget set up right for the next 2 or 3 years, you may not have to do a loan that, you know, maybe you don't want to do anymore because of the interest rates. Interest rates are higher than they used to be, and you know, you may not want to use some of those avenues anymore, especially when they were down so low in the past. So you're changing your plan a little bit, and that's okay. You know, if you think ahead, you know, 3 to 5 years, you know, that might be good for your entity to have a plan like that. And then also too, your entity will start to think about, you know, years ahead and not just one. There are, you know, many different entities that might just, you know, take 1 year at a time, and, you know, they might find as time goes that they wish they'd have thought about something else that was maybe 2 years down the road or 3 years down the road. I can think of some good examples when we've had audits that I think they wish they would have thought about those things, especially since, you know, some of those pieces of equipment are very expensive now, and they might not have known that in that first year that they did a budget. All right, so monthly budget maintenance. So management should review the budget on a monthly basis at a minimum by fund and line item. You know, when you create the budget, it's not the only time you probably should worry about it. You know, I know you created this, and really, you know, you should, you know, watch over it throughout the year. And you might have a group of people that helped you create the budget, and that's okay to have that. And for, you know, either, you know, monthly meetings, you know, you can definitely go through it and see how you're doing. You know, are you spending too much in one line item, and, you know, maybe you're cutting back on another one. And if you know those things, you know, as the year goes by, that helps you kind of keep things on track. So at the end, you don't look like you spent like a lot more than what you were anticipating. Maybe you didn't have the funds there to do that, or maybe you decreased your reserves that you were hoping to keep, you know, for the next year. The board should review the budget information monthly and ask questions during meetings. So I think you can, as management at those entities or at your entity, you can give information to them on a monthly basis. Most softwares are able to print out a budget to actual report that they could see by fund and by line item. So you can give them that information, and if they have some questions about it, then they're able to bring them up in the meeting. Maybe people have some concerns on some of those items that maybe they don't want to spend something in those funds or line items, and that can be talked about on a monthly basis and not later on when it's too late, right? You might have it where 8 months, 8 or 9 months in, you have blown certain parts of your budget, and now you have a problem. So this is supposed to help prevent that. The entity's finance committee is a good group to help watch the budget. If some of our other examples or other times we've talked about this is, that finance committee can be very important for your entity. It can be a group of 3 people if you want it to be like that. It could be your board member, it could be a county auditor or a city auditor, and maybe someone who does the budget. Have that group meet, once a month or once every quarter. Do something like that so then you can keep, that group can keep a watch on some of the items too that maybe it needs to be brought up, in one of the meetings. Depending on the situation, you may need to amend the budget. Things do happen, right? So the plan, there's always going to be a plan that you're going to have, but sometimes you have to deviate from the plan, or there was some kind of accident that caused some equipment to fail or to get destroyed. Now you're going to have to go buy those items, and they're probably weren't in the plan. So then, as a lot of people are, you kind of want to be a planner and schemer for some of these items. So if you can prevent some of that from happening, or if there's going to be a big change, amendments can happen. Expenditure type topics such as staffing, capital projects, equipment may force you to change the plan. Of course, yes. Capital projects. Let's say you were expecting to spend this much on something, and really maybe some prices went up the next year, and now it's something different. So keep that in mind. Watch some of that throughout the year, or even for the next year. If prices are going to go up, keep that in mind. Revenues that were expected may not come in, so a change in plans for spending may be in order. Maybe you were going to get a grant and something happened to the grant. Maybe it was cut in half and you didn't know about it until the very end. That's going to change your plan. If you got maybe some federal aid that you thought it was coming and turned out the project was less, or they weren't going to cover as much for whatever reason, keep that in mind. And revenues, you expect them to come in, yes, and it's nice to have a good estimate for them, but like anything else in these estimates, it might not be how you think it was going to be. Hopefully it's on the positive end where you get more, but there's a chance it's going to be on the other side too. All right, so what can go wrong? For one, you probably want to stay away from the Acme company when you're trying to do your budget. You don't want it to blow up. So to do that, hopefully there's a few things that will help so then it doesn't happen to you. The entity, may not have budgeted enough funds or line items to cover the cost for the year. Okay, so you don't want that to happen. So the better plan you have, probably the better that's going to be for you. If you have a good group that you're working with and departments are trying to help you through that process, that's going to give you the best result, for the year. If maybe some of your departments are new, or they haven't wanted to be involved before, talk to them a little bit about it. Tell them why you're doing this budget, and the better budget you have going to help the whole entity that you're a part of. So have them be part of it in some way if they can be. The entity may have budgeted too much for certain funds or line items. You don't want to worry about having too much in your account, especially when you're trying to budget for something next year. There are some ways that yes, you can move through the year and hopefully modify some things, but you don't want to have it where you obtained too much and you didn't need it, and maybe it's been multiple years. You don't want that problem, and as As of now, too, citizens are a lot more apt to ask questions, especially since the last couple of years. So be prepared for that, and make sure that doesn't happen to you. For most local governments, there's a deadline to submit the budget to the county. Uh, Ask the county. So then if there's some rules that you are maybe not aware of, or maybe just wasn't communicated to you as you're a new person, ask questions. Most of the ones under the county, they're going to collect a lot of the taxes for you. So there's going to be some things that they need from you in order to do that as on a year-to-year basis. So please ask your county auditor. They'd be more than happy, I'm sure, to explain the process that you have to do to get information to them and when that's supposed to come in. You don't want to miss a deadline. The budget can be finalized with errors. Use a method that can check for errors or at least minimize the opportunity for errors. If you have a file that is working great for you, where it gives you check figures and it gives you where you're only supposed to put in information in certain locations, so you don't have to double up on same info, that helps a lot. If you do want to check out the one on our website too, that's supposed to be meant for that. It's supposed to be simple. If you want to make changes to it, it's supposed to do that as well. But either whatever file you're using, make sure you have something in place so then the errors are limited. You don't want to find out later on that there's a larger error in something that you did, or that maybe it was an error in collecting. You don't want to have to deal with that if you don't need to. So make sure there's some checks for yourself to make sure you don't have to go there. Okay, so topics of interest. So this is a topic that we've definitely had some questions on. Capital projects. What do you do with them? There might be times that that or during the budget, there's a capital project happening, and then something happens. Maybe your vendor that you're using couldn't get the project done. Maybe some of the supplies, during the last couple of years, there's still supply issues. So maybe they didn't get the supplies in when they should have, or when they had the time to do it, so it got postponed. So there's a few things that you can do to go through the budget still and to modify something. So, one option is that you can transfer the funds that you did collect for that capital project into a capital project fund. And if it usually, and if it does usually extend past 1 year anyways, that's really the definition of that capital project fund anyway. So don't be afraid to use that. I know when I've explained that to other people who've asked about it, just make sure that the board you're working with is aware of that transfer. It could be a large amount. You could have a $2 million project that you wanted to do but couldn't. You want to make sure the board is aware that you're transferring it to a fund to sit there and wait, until that project is complete or when it can be started. So that's one way. You can also leave it in the fund that you were originally headed in, but just make sure that when you do your budget, say for like this year right now, you want to keep that cash balance that you did not spend on the project in there. So even though that it was supposed to be this year and just got canceled or just got postponed, whatever the case is, make sure that cash still shows up in your estimate. Because if you know it's going to be postponed, it reasonably should be in your fund balance as well. Now, some people do get concerned about that because then their fund balance gets high. We've had some good questions about that too. So if you do want to keep it in the fund, you can for the next budget year. You just want to make sure that you put that cost in there again one more time. Even though you did it last year, if it got postponed and you kept the cash in there with the next year coming, you still can put those expenditures in again. So you don't have to worry about, like, I already put them in there, I duplicated this, well, I get in trouble for that. As long as you do it that way, you're okay, as far as I know. You may have the project in a specific, capital project fund, because of a bond covenant. So there might be times that you're going to do a project and you have a bond to go along with it. Guess what? There might be a bond covenant in there that says that they want you to put it in its own fund anyways. So even though you don't have a problem with, spending or timing of the project, it's going to require you to put it in there anyways. So keep that in mind. Bond covenants, your auditors do test that as well when they come. So if they don't see a fund, you might have a finding of some sort, or you might just get brought up from your auditor as well. So keep that in mind. Okay. Okay, next one I just want to quickly talk about is the county capital projects levy. I know there's some mill levies that are sunsetting soon that counties have used. Make sure you don't forget about this one, because this one did get updated in the last couple of sessions, I believe, and about the last letter. So the letter G, with the highway type expenditures, that got added in. So if you had some other that are rolled levies that are sunsetting, keep in mind, this one's available to you too. Work with your state's attorney, of course, if you have never used this code before, but I just want to make sure that people were aware that this does exist. Okay, so next one, estimated revenues, expenses, and reserves. There's some topics that people do have asked about. Think about those known sources of revenues. What did you get last year? Is there a trend? Keep that in mind. Expenses, go through the department to see if they have some costs in there that maybe they want to bring up to you, that if they should put in the budget or not. Have those discussions with those departments. Cash reserve, we talked about that a few times today already. Don't forget about it. If you're doing your budget file, it's going to be very important that you have a check figure for this to make sure you don't go over 75%. Transfers in and out, don't forget that they should equal. There's buddies there, right? Transfers in has a buddy for transfers out. They should be together. So when you're doing your budget, make sure you don't have like a transfer out, but then not a transfer in somewhere else. I have seen that before personally, and I think people just kind of forget about that, or they know that, okay, they know they're gonna have a transfer out here, but they forget about where the other transfer in is going. You want to make sure that those do equal, because that's more of a revenue for that other fund. So if you don't have a transfer in there, that's gonna skew your budget on the other side. So just keep track of that and make sure that you have those equal. And cash balances. There's certain ways that you can do this. You can definitely have it where it comes from your budget file, where there's budgets, your appropriations and your revenues that kind of come up with a balance for you at the end. You can definitely use that. And our file does give you that option as well. There's also a note in there, if you have a different way to have your cash balance, please use that too. You might know that something is not going to take place, or like, for example, like a revenue that you know is not going to come in, or if you know that revenue is going to be twice of what you put the budget in for, modify your cash balance. Remember, that's supposed to be a very good, reasonable amount, and it's not going to be perfect, but have the best attempt you can. Okay, for the last section here, I just want to do a few tips about the file that we have. And this is example of a special revenue fund. And keep in mind that there are some nice little features in here that's supposed to help you. When you put your file together, maybe you have a version like this from the past. This version has been out there for a long time, or one that looks very similar. But what the difference is now is that you don't have to put numbers in similar, locations, and then sometimes errors take place. So the way this is set up is, if you look at this fund here, you have a support file for all the different line items that you want to put in there from your software in that fund. You can modify this. keep in mind, there's also a tips and tricks tab at the beginning of this file. So if you have some issues with trying to add cells or rows, or you want to add more funds, I did only put in like 15 special revenue funds, but if you have more than that, make sure that you go back to that tab and look at how you add those in. And if you want to put, some of your coding that's related just to your software, this is meant for that too. Like, you don't have to have a certain software to use this file. So, you have your coding might be a little different than someone else's, but guess what? In this file, you can make the codes work for yourself. Also too, with the talk we had for about, cash reserve and interim fund, there is a check figure on the side there. So it's supposed to let you know that there is a cap, and the numbers that get grabbed from the files you put in, all the numbers you put in, end up there. So you don't even have to worry about trying to come up with the number on the side, because if you notice, the blue cells are the ones that you get to fill out, the white ones you don't have to. So then it's going to fill that in for you. So you'll know what probably the max amount that you should have. You don't have to use the max amount, but it's supposed to keep you in check. So if you happen to put a number in there that does get over the 75% rule, it will say, hey, you're over, or it's going to be a nice little flag for you that you'll have to address, if you look at the file. If you have a max levy to worry about, that's supposed to help you here too. You put the numbers in the way they are with the blue cells. It's supposed to help you kind of estimate how many mills it's going to take in each of these funds. So if you have some worry about that, hopefully this file does help you too, in the fact that it's going to give you a flag. Flag will go up and say, yes, it's over. And you're gonna have to modify something, maybe go back to the board, go back to your departments, and figure out, okay, we need to have this less because we can't collect this much. We have this much in cash, right? So then you have some that's still there from the last couple of years, maybe. If it gets to be too high, then you do have to worry about, how high is my fund balance? And some of those numbers that are estimates really do impact what that amount of levy is. So, so keep that in mind, like your cash reserve, if you go, or the cash balances, that will really have a big impact too, because let's say you have an estimate that is a lot higher than that. You want to make sure that you use the number that is the best you can in the most reasonable amount. Okay, yeah, a couple minutes here left, but again, blue cells, don't worry about the white cells. It's meant for you to fill in the blue ones, and hopefully that is simpler for you for the future. Remember, when you're making a budget, it's supposed to be kind of fun too, right? And if you have some, this is a file that's included in ours where it gives you a nice pie chart, it automatically fills out for you. So if you want to show people like where their money is being spent in a nice pie chart format, that will be there for you. And I think some people have kept it in. You don't have to if you don't want to, but I think it's a fun thing that you can do to show the board, where they can see like how big of a piece of pie is going to their highway department. Where is it going other departments? And they can see that. And I think it's been helpful for some to keep it in. Keep in mind too, a lot of people had trouble with years and dates, for all the different tabs that are out there. I mean, if you look at the file on our website, there is, if you're a bigger city or a bigger county, you have lots of tabs to worry about. So by having the ability to change that date up on top of this tab was a huge bonus for many people. Then have to go worry about changing all the different 3-year tables. That's supposed to be able to do it for you. So it's kind of like magic, and it's done. That I hope helps people as well. And that kind of concludes what I'm going to be talking about today for my part. I do hope that everyone out there who is actually in their budget right now, hopefully this helped you and to get you where, it's a good thing that you're doing, that you get to be part of it. You might have been a volunteer or voluntold, one of those two things, but either way, if you are able to accomplish it and get it to your board so it gets on time, and it's a nice budget for people to follow for the future. It keeps everyone on in check, and hopefully that has been able to help you. I know some people will be listening at a later time, so if you're listening, now when it's nighttime or somewhere else, good morning, good afternoon, good night.